Hi, everyone. Before we get to our show today, I wanted to let you know that we have something new on the Path 11 Productions website. I have had the opportunity to record some of my guided meditations for you, and we are giving one away for free. It is called the Anxiety Scan. We have another one up there called Archangel Raphael, which is channeling the healing energy of that archangel to help your immune system become stronger and to help decrease any stress that you might be having. There's also another one up there that we have as one that you could take advantage of is a distance Reiki healing from me. So we are going to be putting out some more of these guided meditations throughout the next month or so, and we hope that you enjoy them. Okay, let's get to our show today. Hi, and thanks for tuning in to the Path 11 podcast. I am your host, April Hanna. At the Path 11 podcast, we are here trying to deliver leading-edge research on consciousness, healing, and metaphysics. And just like you, we are trying to answer the big questions about life. Who are we? Why are we here? And what is our purpose? We hope by listening to our podcast, it will make each day you live on Earth a little easier to understand. And now for today's podcast. So I would like to welcome back Suzane Northrop. We have had her on the Path 11 podcast before, and if you would like to listen to the very first interview that we did, it's episode 149. That was back in May of 2018, actually. And we talked a lot about in that conversation about the Life After Life documentary that you were a part of, and also Dr. Gary Schwartz and the Afterlife Experiments that you participated in. So I'm not going to go too much into that area, but would definitely like to welcome Suzane back. If you have never heard of her, she's an internationally acclaimed medium, grief and bereavement expert, TV and radio host, and author of 3 books to date. She has helped thousands worldwide heal from loss of loved ones by bridging the gap between the world of the living and the spiritual world. And she is one of the mediums that is going to be at the Afterlife Awareness Conference, June 4th through the 7th, 2020. We're going to be in Chicago, and she actually does a live gallery reading. Now, I have been at the conference 2 years. This will be my 3rd year. I always enjoy this part of the conference. It really is amazing. Just the evidence that she brings through is kind of like none other medium I have seen work before. So, Suzane, welcome back.
Well, thank you, April. It's always a joy to see you and connect with you, and you do such great work, and you always have a smile on your face while you're doing it, which is always really nice. So
thanks. Yeah.
So yes, and actually, I have done these podcasts a few times, and they are, for anybody that needs to know, obviously they can check them out through you, but I will have them. I'm just doing a whole new rewrite on my webpage, so I will be putting new ones up on there as well. The one from Path 11 happens to be filled with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So we really filled with a lot of it. You know, my assistant said, like, you know, the file is too big. The file is too big.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground, I think, last time. So
yeah, yes. So anyway, but separate from all of that, you know, you do great work, and I'm like I said, I'm thrilled to have you at the conference. And as we all know, we were just discussing the importance of the conference and what a great conference it is. And there is not too many of those. We would say running around. So the fact that this has continued to go on for 10 years is pretty spectacular, and you'll see that there's, as you well know from going to them, there is a very strong devotee of people who come to this conference, and new people, but there's certainly a hardcore of people who come every year, and it's extremely important to them in their lives, because you do get to share with others that have experienced it and gone through their own personal journeys and of loss. And you know, I always sort of say, and I've emphasized this quite literally, you know, my work is not about those that have gone to spirit, our loved ones that have made the physical transaction. My work is about the living people, because we're the ones that are left here, and we're the ones that have to figure out how to, you know, get up in the morning and go out about our day, put our shoes and the socks on. This doesn't come with a manual. We have our moments, hours, minutes, And it's very hard. But the wonderful thing about the conference, which you know, is that for me, I can't imagine you walking away not with the belief of knowing that they may not be in their bodies, but they exist. They are still alive. That soul, that energy, that's a continuation, is unbelievably present. And if we can, not that it's easy, if we can somehow get ourselves into a place of the grief where it doesn't consume us so much, then we'll hear the messages from them. And, they won't be like Hollywood. They won't be like, these loud, walking into a room, here I am. They may be very subtle. As a matter of fact, mostly they're very subtle. And there are only things you would know synonymously connected to these persons that have made their transition. So, when you go to the conference, you should leave. I can't imagine you wouldn't leave with knowing those thoughts. And people will always say to me, and I'm sure you've heard them say that to you as well, April, that it's like, well, I want to hear them. I want to know they're near me. I want to know all of that. And I can't. And I say, because you're still grieving. And when you are grieving that much, it's very hard for that to happen. And sometimes it's a time thing. And sometimes there's a whole lot of other elements that are involved. But you have to know in your heart that their job, those loved ones that have made their transition, their job is to let you know any way that they can that they are around. And they will do that. It's just, we have the harder part of listening.
Yeah. So I was thinking for the podcast today, I want to ask you a question that a client of mine asked me. And it was a pretty deep question. And I don't know if I had the answer to it or not, but I thought, you know what? I have Suzanne coming up, and she would probably be the perfect person to ask. So let me tell you just a small little story here. My client, she's young 20s and had recently, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, lost her dad to suicide. And she was talking to one of her dad's friends recently, and I live up here in Saratoga Springs, New York. There's a famous racetrack up here. And when she was talking to her dad's friend, he says, "Oh, I see your dad every day." And she's like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, he comes to visit me every day. I'll walk by around this one turn and I'll see him, and, he'll just, say hi. And sometimes he'll give me the numbers of the horses and who I should play. And sometimes I'll see him up in the stands and I see him with the magazine." And he said, "One time I was walking and I saw your dad, but when I got closer, it was actually somebody else, but I could have sworn, it was him." So my client asked me, she said, "What is that about? How come I can't see him? Is he really seeing him? What do you think is going on here?" And so I kind of struggle sometimes a little bit too with this question, because as I understand more about and study more about consciousness and, speak to other people, I kind of get confused as to, as she is confused, is there really this deceased person there, this loved one that we have there in some sort of physical form, or is this friend of her dad's just tapping into the consciousness of who her dad was? And is it really the consciousness of each human being that passes? Is it more of just like a data stream? And, his relationship with her father was about the horses and the racetrack. And so is that friend just creating this reality of how he's seeing his best friend in the afterlife? And this is how he can relate to that consciousness, and it's showing up as signs or maybe a real true apparition. And I was always, so that's kind of like part one of my question. And part two, with the work that you do, it can feel like when you're watching you or watching other mediums do gallery readings, like, you can't see anything, but it almost seems like that deceased loved one is whispering in your ear and giving you this information. But is that what's really happening, or do you just have the ability, because you have done this for such a long time and you know how to kind of go in between different maybe reality frames and dimensions, and you're able to just access information of a database of a soul that was here in a physical incarnation, and that information comes through to the audience member?
Okay, that's a loaded question.
I know. That's all we're about today, right? Loaded questions.
Let's do part one.
Okay.
So again, it's interesting because I had just, if you do a reel back, I just sort of answered this first part, which is this. Because of this thing called love, that's what it's about. This thing called love. We don't stop loving people because they have physically left this dimension or physically died. Their spirit has moved on. We don't stop loving them, nor do they stop loving me. Because the thread of love is so, so strong, it's a continuum. So the continuum is basically this. Because they are aware that you are in the harder spot. They are aware that you are in the questioning of, do we die? What does this mean? Are they still around? All of those things. They were here once. They got it. They understand that. And because of this thread of love, they know that they need to let us know, because it's about us, not about them. It's about us. They need to let us know that they are fine so that it helps us in our grief process. So they do this in a variety of ways. Now, remember I told you before, when they come to us, look for something that would be synonymously connected to them. This is a perfect example. He had a relationship with her father about the track. That was their connection. So to me, it makes a whole lot of sense that that would be the way he would come to him, because that would be the way he could get it. Because it's about getting it. It's about knowing that they have given you this message without a question. And the way that we do that is like, oh yeah, only him and I shared this together. So when they want us to know, that's what they do. So this was very, very key, that he would have this ongoing relationship with her dad. Now, it's her dad. And, he left this, and it's interesting that we brought this up because I'm actually going to be giving a lecture on that this year at the Afterlife Conference.
Great.
So, yes, it's going to be suicide from a perspective of a medium. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be doing that, block out or whatever Terry calls them, because we thought it was important, and it never has been really said in a certain way from my perspective. But in any case, so that's the way he's going to come to this guy. The way he's going to come to his daughter may be very, very different. And the thing is that he could come to her probably, which I believe he probably has. She's still in conflict that he passed, the way he passed. She's got to get through that first, which is extremely difficult because that, for many of feel like, we take it, and I get it, we take it really personally, like, well, how could he have done this to us? When the truth of the matter is, suicide is not about us, it's about them. It's about that place that they no longer, that hole that they can no longer get out of. And so we tend to take it very personal, like if, would have, could have, should have, whatever, and it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. I've done this too long, and I've talked to too many folks that have made their transition this way, and it gets combobulated with all these other things of, religion, where you go to hell, and it has awful connotations, really awful, painful connotations to these people, that's the last thing in the world that they need to hear. Really, it's really the last thing in the world that they need to hear. So that's first what she has to get through. Now, interesting enough, because I have done this for so long, and obviously I've spoken to so many people, and obviously younger people and spouses and everything else, not everybody feels that way. There are those people that say it wasn't a matter of if, it was a when. I knew this was going to happen. I knew they weren't going to make it. Mm-hmm. And when they come to that point, it's interesting because it I'm not saying it eliminates, but it certainly puts it in a perspective where they don't feel like they could have saved them, because they knew this person was tortured, and you've got to be very tortured to do that. So because they loved them no matter what, and when you really love somebody no matter what, you don't sit into the judgment of what they did to me. because it was their life, what they were living. And they weren't really living it. They were just barely trying to stay alive.
Yeah.
So you got to, on a suicide basis, on her particular basis, she's got to get through that first. This wasn't personal.
Yeah, and what's your take? Because I know a lot of people that I do know a lot of people who have lost people to suicide, and I tend to see the living be very concerned about their soul's transition. Are they okay? Are they in limbo? Are they a lost soul? Have they made it to the light? Do you have anything just in your own experience? Like you said, you've spoken to many folks who have made their transition this way. Do you know or have an idea of what happens when you exercise the free will to take your own life? Is there a limbo phase? Do they make it somewhere So
again, that's another mixed misnomer that we think because we pass in that way that's going to be the case. I had a woman the other day, she said my father was such an atheist, he didn't believe in any of this, and he didn't believe in God, and it's sort of like he's coming through, and it's like, does he get it now? Does he know that? Even though that was his thoughts and his beliefs, prior to his transaction. So I said, well, first of all, he got over that, because he's obviously still alive, because I just had a conversation with him about you. But again, that's part of the stigma, April, and that's also part of the stigma, believe it or not, that I believe is very tied into religion, not God, not spirituality, but religion. And it's like, God doesn't sit there and make this judgment upon us. We make this judgment upon our own selves. Nobody has to sort of add it to this. So it's not so much of how we die that has to do with our transition. It has to do more of what we call the state of the mind, or the consciousness. So are they floating around in limbo? No. No one dies alone. We're all met by a crew of people who love us and help us in that transition. So, and many people, which a lot of people don't always get, is that some people do it. I'm not saying everybody does, but some people take their own lives because they really feel it's going to be a better place and they're going to be out of this pain. Mm-hmm. So, contrary to those thought processes of limbo and floating to where we're at, that's our stuff in our head, our beliefs, whatever we hang on to believe about that. But that's not the case, because I have spoken to many, many, many people that have taken their own lives, and they know when they get there, they kind of wish that maybe, not always, that they could have held on, but a lot of them couldn't. I mean, a lot of them, they couldn't get out of that hole. They didn't know how to get out of that hole. And what a lot of people don't know is because many of them, and this is really true, many of them were tired of putting the people that they loved through hell. And see, we don't even think about that perspective, mm-hmm. because many of these people that are tortured, if they've been loved by people, that those people that they've been loved are also tortured by them. And they feel like they've done everything, I could tell you the doctor, his son, he did everything he could. He was a shrink. He did everything he possibly could. He was on every medication and whatever in the world to try to save his son, and he couldn't. Because his son was just tortured. He felt like he was killing his parents by trying to stay here until he couldn't anymore. So, it's not a black and white. It's every particular individual has their own, perspective on why they've made the choice in this. I sometimes personally, I have to say, grapple with, the fact is that, are we sort of technically, supposed to do it? Well, technically kind of no. However, people kill themselves in many different ways without actually committing suicide, by overdosing or by living a particular, do you know what I'm saying to you?
Right.
You could say that that's a form of suicide also. So you could make yourself crazy is what I'm trying to say, because people do die of broken hearts, and they can't stay here anymore, and they maybe can't take their life on a conscious level, but they do it on another level. So it's just really sitting in the judgment of what one person's soul journey is. And that's really what it comes down to. It's one person's soul journey. And I've gone through it in my own personal life. I went through it with my nephew. And it was not an easy deal. He was 24 years old. It was, he would have been 40 actually this month. So it was a long time ago. He was 24. And I think, did my work prepare me? In some ways, yes. Because it prepared me of this whole thing. Like, he was a beautiful little boy, but he was tortured. And I knew it was torture. And I couldn't save him. Nobody could save him. Now, were there options in his life? Yeah. Could he get through those options? He couldn't. I mean, I would hope he could, but he couldn't. So, I have contact with him. I've had contact with him ever since he's passed. So that's very helpful. And when I see him, I always laugh. I will definitely kick you in the ass when I see you. That's going to be it. That's a definite. But I can truly, in my heart, without a question, know that, and I don't like to use this word because it's like it's one of those pat words that people sort of say, but I really do believe he is in a better place. I have no doubt about that in my mind. Because he was, and I'm sure if you've experienced somebody who is a tortured person, your heart goes out to them. Because they can't get out of that hole. They have no way of knowing how to get out of that hole, as much as they've tried everything. Yeah. So, it's there's so many elements and there's so many levels of what we talk about in consciousness and all that, that kind of like go on. But there is our own soul's journey, and and we all, meaning me and every person that was connected to him. We have our learning through that, and about our own interconnection with that process. So, the first, the first question is that they do let us know. I mean, I can tell some incredible stories the day of his death that which I do share, and I will share at the conference when I do it, and you should certainly be there for that to break out. But so it's interesting. We're always so worried about them being in a limbo place because, and most people don't really know what the limbo place is. There are different levels of consciousness when we make our transition. That is true. That absolutely is true. And it's like, just sort of like, we have to go through school on the earth plane while you go on the school and the spiritual plane also. So, when you leave here, you have certain learnings that you continue to do as your soul evolves and deciding what your next program is, whether that is at some point to come back or whatever. But there's a whole other level of, if you believe in reincarnation, and you've got to believe that you've been around for some time here because, as long as there's been human beings on the earth, and the involvement of that there is a continued program, and the program really is, all of it is based in love. I mean, it just is. And so when I try to share what I have experienced is that the place where we go in the non-physical place of our consciousness when we leave this plane is a place of love that on some level is almost impossible for us to understand it in this physical dimension.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes. And that's really quite incredible. And that is something that I hear about an awful lot is that incredibleness of what that is. And that is a wonderful thing. So, is it a better place? It's different. Earth plane is different than the non-physical realm. So you're right. It is a form of, it is about the consciousness, but it's a combination of the consciousness and / soul, because the soul is the consciousness. It's sort of like, it's not the brain, it's the consciousness. So, when I say to people, if you've ever gone in the hospital and somebody's been in a coma, and you talk to them, do you think they hear you? Well, believe it or not, most people say, yes, I know they heard me. Well, they can't respond because their brain is is operating. But the consciousness, which is tied in with the soul and love, always can hear. So you can sit there and talk to them, and they're going to hear you. They're absolutely going to hear you. Maybe not in the way that you can have an interconnection or speaking with each other, but there are mind-to-mind things. It's like, when we pick up, if we happen to have a very, very close relationship with certain people in our life, we will pick up, things, mind to mind. When you're really connected to somebody, you do pick up thoughts. Well, that's kind of the same place that we're talking about. So.
Yeah, so let me ask you, so like the part 2 of my question of, well, it's kind of part 1 and part 2, where you're saying they are trying to communicate with us, they will give us signs.
Yes.
Then I'm kind of thinking, where I question that is also, what I've heard is energy follows thought. So when I'm receiving a sign from my mom, is it just because my thoughts are creating my reality, therefore I think I'm getting a sign from my mom, but really it's just the energy following the thought?
You are getting a sign from your mom. And you are getting a sign from your mom, number one, because she loves you dearly. She hasn't stopped loving you. You haven't stopped loving her. So what happens is that we try to, all of us, intellectualize this process. If you can break it down to what we call the basics of love, it's simple, honey. It's simple. It's not your mind picking up. What you're picking up is your mom letting you know of her love for you, and the best way that she can, and the best way that you can receive it, so that you know she's okay to help you be okay. So try not to over-intellectualize it, because, well, you listen, honey, you're not alone. Everybody does it.
I know. Because we're all trying to figure it out.
Was that really my mom? Was that really my brother? Was it my dad smoked? Was it? And what you do, again, is the more you do that, the more you deny the connection that happened. And you have to embrace those when that happens, because the truth is that right now, in the stronger phase of the first year, you're going to get a lot of contact. The second year is even harder than the first year, because the second year, reality sits in. Meaning that, I know I'm not going to get the call. I know she's not going to come for this. So you have to cherish and embrace every single time you get a contact. And damn it, write it down. Write it down. Because you'll be really shocked 6 months down the road when you listen to it and you say like, oh, wow, I forgot that. We think we're going to remember it. We're going to think we're going to remember how we feel, how we thought, what happened during that time. And we don't. So this is a really private prime time for you during this journey. So no, this is not about, she's using your brain, because your brain is the receiver of consciousness. Your brain is the radio set of receiver of consciousness. You know what it is when you're in the car and you're moving the radio switch around, unless of course you got Sirius or whatever it is, and it's frequency. You're right, it is frequency. So you know that the stations sometimes are more harder to get in than others, correct? Yes. Mm-hmm. So you turn the dial, you do all that other, manual things to try to get it in. Of course, it's very different now because we have, we have GPSs and all that other kind of stuff. But even then, that when you're on the cell phone, and you're in a bad zone, it chops out, because it's a frequency thing. It doesn't mean that they're not coming through. It just means that the mechanisms are having a hard time for that to happen. So don't intellectualize this. You will thank me for not intellectualizing this, because right now these times of connection are very precious to you, very precious. And so you really need to embrace them, because you need all of that connection right now of love that you can get from your mom.
Right.
And she knows this. Mm-hmm. Get it. She knows it. You're her daughter. You're connected. She knows it.
Yeah, I had two fun things happen with the radio, but there was a part of me that was like, is this just coincidence? But, I'm in a grief group for 6 weeks, and the first week that I went, as I turned into the parking lot, Stairway to Heaven came on. And I just kind of chuckled, was like, okay. And then this week I get in my car and Knocking on Heaven's Door comes on. And I was like, my mom and I both love music. So there's a part of me that if I don't intellectualize it, I'm like, oh, cool. This is great.
And of course she's going to do with music because you both love music. That was the first song I heard when Aaron died, was Stairway to Heaven. And that happened to have been one of his songs. Huh. He was a real nut for that, for that group. He loved them. I mean, So, yeah. So, yes, you're right. Now, it's interesting because you said, what was the first thing you said? Something about that we're going to the group. What did you say before then? Right before then, I want to hear you say this.
Well, I guess the first thing was when the first week when I was going in, I was pulling into the parking lot and Stairway to Heaven came on. And then the second time, as soon as I got into the car to drive to the group, Knocking on Heaven's Door came on. I don't remember what I said before that.
You said that, so what you said was that coincidence?
Oh, right, yeah.
Coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. Okay? Mm-hmm. So it's like that's as important to the journey as anything else, because you have to have a great leap of faith. That's what you got to have.
Right.
For that continuum to be. So as I said to you before, one of the first things that I said to you is they will come to you what would be synonymously the way that you would know them. You had a great love of music. You had two songs, Stairway to Heaven and Heaven, Sitting on Heaven's Door. And you know who wrote the second one, right?
Aerosmith? Was it Aerosmith? No, I might be messing that up.
Eric Clapton.
Oh, right.
Mm-hmm. And you know what happened to him, right?
Yeah, well, his son died.
His son died, exactly.
Right. Yeah, it was pretty tragic, too.
Pretty tragic, yes. Fell out a window in New York City, yes.
Yeah, so basically, what I'm taking from you is be light about it. Have fun with it. Write stuff down,
hard enough it is, but you know your mom. Mm-hmm. You had this great love of music. It would make total sense to me that would be the way she'd come to you. That's why I said look for things synonymously connected to the person. Like the racetrack is a perfect example.
Right.
That was what their link was. I mean, I use this really crazy sick analogy, but when my father died, it was a house of all women. And there was always this big joke with my father about, could he ever hit the toilet, right? So the night he died, we're going to the toilet all night long, and it was like a big joke. The next day, it's like, okay, who was the wise guy that wet the toilet? I mean, we're all girls here. I mean, who was the wise guy? It was just, my sister blurts it out, and it was just like, well, who got the last laugh? I don't know how he did it, but he did it. He clearly did it. The dog didn't do it.
Yeah. So you also said something interesting that I think our listeners will really benefit hearing more about. You use that great example of the radio waves, right? So if you can't get that station in, you kind of have to fine tune it. You need a better connection. And so for people who are feeling like, well, how come I'm not getting any signs? Why isn't my relative visiting me? I want to hear from them. What are some of your suggestions that humans can do maybe to fine tune their connection to be able to be more open, to get that transmission, to be able to have some sort of sign or communication with their loved one?
Okay, so we're going to go back to basic ABCs. And the first one that I had just mentioned to you succinctly, you got to have a big leap of faith. If you don't have a leap of faith, you're going to really grapple. Because by having the great leap of faith and believing in your heart without a question that these people, yes, they physically died, but they can't die because it's that energy, and that breaking down that energy is the basics of love, because that is still the strongest force in the universe, period. So because of that force, they will let you know in any way that they can. So you have to suspend a belief system of knowing that they're going to come to me. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but they will come to me. And I have to trust that. And they will. And if they can't get through to you, they're going to get through to somebody connected to you, because that's what they do. If you see the doggy look at something, you don't see anything there, you see the tail wagging, there's somebody standing there. You just don't see them. Mm-hmm. Ask children. The children will tell you, oh, yeah, Grandma came the other day. She was telling me about, something you did or whatever. You'll look at the kid, and the kid, it's a matter of fact, because children, until we destroy them, it's a natural thing for them. So that's the things, you can't overthink it. You just got to, as you said, you got to play with it. You got to trust it. You got to know when it's going to come in. There's always things that we can do. I mean, I wrote a whole book on this, actually. And I wrote that book inspired by my nephew, because all these people that would come up to me and say, I would do anything to have a contact with my mom, my dad, my brother. And so that was in the back of my head. And I thought, you know what? No one has ever written a book about, all the ways it can happen. So I wrote the Medium's Cookbook, Recipes for the Soul. Of course, sometimes ends up in the cookbook section, but that's why I wrote that book. And it really is. It's a step-by-step manual that we personally can do to start that connection. And people buy the book, and they've had some real success for it, because it's like anything else in life. The more you want something to happen, the more you have to put energy into it and trust it. Things just don't fall from the sky. It's energy. And if you really need that, then you need to either, like you say, either need to be, now I would say if you're in a grief group, thank you, Suzanne. Personally, I would want to make sure that I was in a group that believed in the afterlife, believed in ADC, after-death communications. I would not work well in a group that didn't believe that.
Right. Yeah, no, I am a part of a group that does actually, one person actually brought it up last week. They said, has anyone ever gone to a medium? And I just kind of sat there and smirked. I was a little quiet. Nobody in the group really knows that I have this podcast or what I do quite yet. I don't want to overwhelm people too much, but it was cool that we had a discussion about that. So, yeah.
And how many people in the room had?
I think maybe all but one.
Interesting, yeah.
And it's about a group of 10?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Of course. Because the whole thing is that, when I was starting out my practice millions of years ago, somebody would say, well, why would I want to go to somebody like you? And I just quietly sit to myself and smile. I go well, when you lose somebody, you will. Because everybody, this is something, that's what always has been a mind boggle to me, is that no one escapes this. This is part of the program. Death is part of life, period. No getting around it. Your own death, and somebody's going to go through somebody that you love in your life. So this stuff, you're into this stuff? No, it's called, this stuff is as much a part of life as life.
Yeah, agreed. Totally agreed. Yeah. So I want to let our listeners know, too, that how Terry sets up the Afterlife Awareness Conference. If people who are listening want to meet Suzanne and actually want to take her 3-hour training that she has, you can just sign up for her pre-conference workshop, which is on June 4th. And you are going to be doing Mastering Mediumship Part 1?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Do you
Austin, Part 2. So I always like to do the beginners, because even though it's not really the beginners, because I pile in so many things, because I have this brain that's just like an encyclopedia on this stuff, and I feel like if somebody, if they've never done anything, they're going to get a great foundation. Even if they've studied, I'm going to give them things that they've never heard before, because I have this, encyclopedia in my brain. So that's why I always like to do the beginning part. So, and Austin is a fine teacher. That's one of her specialties, actually, is teaching. So we figured we would be a power team.
Tag team, yeah. So that's going to be happening June 4th. Anyone listening can go to afterlifeconference.com. You can select the option to just take the pre-conference workshop with Suzanne if you'd like, or you can just stay for the whole entire event. I highly recommend it. And Suzanne is also going to be talking about suicide on the other side, and that's Saturday from 2 o'clock to 3:15. And also Path 11...
know that. I didn't even know that.
Yes, I'm letting you know now. You are a breakout session Saturday from 2 to 3:15.
Okay.
And, we are going to be there. We're doing it a little bit different this year. We have created Path 11 TV, so we will be streaming the conference, and people can sign up for a membership that will also give them access to the 2018, 2019 conference, among many other projects that we have done. We have finally loaded all of our footage that we've been doing over the years on this Path 11 TV. So that's how we are going to be live streaming it this year, but in a kind of a different way. So we're really excited to be down there. And I just love talking to you and picking your brain and asking you some of the challenging questions that many of my clients ask me, and many questions that I have myself. So it's always wonderful to have you on, Suzanne. And I know that you also do private sessions, group sessions. So people can go to her website, SuzaneNorthrop.com. She spells her name SuzaneNorthrop.
And even if you misspell it, you'll find me, because I'm, kind of like all over. And, I do phone sessions. I do small group sessions. I do privates. I obviously I live in New York. I think you knew that.
But yeah, we're in New York. We'll have to hook up, again, and we'll do some more things. We're too close not to,
Yeah, absolutely. We should absolutely do some things. Yes, and I'm redoing as we speak. I'm redoing my website, and I know that my web person wants me to have. Well, obviously I can't do. She wants me to have some new shots. For when I'm working, or from somebody who's like a pro, so I may have to take you up on that as well.
All right, so we'll get you covered in June. How about that?
That sounds perfect.
All right,
totally perfect. But anyway, so my thoughts are with you.
Thank you.
My thoughts are really, really with you. And I know that this is definitely not easy, but we'll get a chance to spend a little time together. How's that sound?
Okay, that would be wonderful. Thanks so much, Suzanne.
You're very welcome, April. And we're right around the corner.
Yeah. All right.
Our tow guy said, that's right up the street.
That is. It is. All right, my dear. Well, thanks again. Always a pleasure. Wonderful speaking with you, and we'll see you in June.
You too, April. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Path 11 podcast today. I hope you all enjoyed this show. And if you haven't checked out our Patreon page, I'd like you to do so, because we are going to start putting some content over there that is only for our Patreon subscribers. You can get content for as little as donating $1 a month, and it could just be a one-time donation. We have other freebies over there that you can get depending upon how much you would like to donate. And again, it could be a one-time donation, or you can continue to keep your subscription on a monthly basis at that donation level. But I just put my MBT immersive experience, which was a 4-day intensive meditation training in Tennessee with physicist Tom Campbell. I was listening to binaural beats, going to altered states of consciousness, having out-of-body experiences and life-changing experiences that I was able to bring back for myself, for my clients, for my friends. That was just out of this world. So if you would like to listen to that, I'd like you to head on over to path11podcast.com. You're going to see an orange button that says Patreon. Become a Patreon today, and you can have access to that podcast. And I would like to remind you to head on over to path11productions.com and check out the membership that we have for the Afterlife Awareness Conference. We have over 25 hours of footage with amazing speakers like William Buhlman, Thomas John, Terry Daniel, Suzanne Geisman, Suzane Northrop, Linda Fitch, Austin Wells, just a few people to name off that were amazing. These workshops are just so valuable. So I think that you would really enjoy it. It's also a great thing to think about, to maybe give the gift to somebody who is struggling with grief. If you are looking for resources, this is a great conference to send people to check out. And thanks again for listening today.